Hey, you are now live straight from the Cookout with your boy, TheeAlexMAc. You got your boy Dapper Dom over here.
What up, people?
Hey, we really want to make sure we, spend some good time with this topic of just, really mental health, mental wellness, men's mental health, man. And we felt like, one episode, wasn't enough to really expand in it. So we decided to hit y'all with part two.
Yeah, I see you got the hat.
Yeah, man. Yeah, everything. A little bit behind the scenes is, man, like, when we talk about these episodes, like, I hope you guys can see, the thought, the passion that we're putting into these episodes. Try to take it seriously, but still making it feel like as Don will say, like, hey, we just in the barbershop talking, man. So
open it up.
When I think about these episodes, man, honestly, I do a lot of online shopping, man. And so this one came up. I think the brand's name is Friends of Felix.
Okay.
And shout out to them. And I think if I'm not wrong, I think they send a portion back of their proceeds to mental health stuff. So they got a brand that has this and merchandise is right around mental health. So man, I was like, hey, this be the perfect time to throw that on the top of the head, man. But yeah, man, part two.
Also, too, bro. Look, you feel like you gonna try to make me earn this Dapper Dom?
No, sir, man. I'm trying to make sure I'm at your fly, man. That's all.
I hear you. So last episode, man, we kind of talked about sizeism a little bit, but more so too, like how it affected us from a mental standpoint, like confidence growing up in our kid and adolescent years, and like how do we talk to our kids, and affirmations. What affirmations do we say to them, as well as how do we tell them to engage and interact with their peers and the conversations that's going on. But I kind of want to keep that topic going as far as like just mental health and thought process, and like how has that transition, because we talked about where our confidence shifted growing up, and it was more not in a healthy way. It's almost like being validated by others.
Yeah.
And if you're relying on others to fill you up, then good or bad, whatever they say, that's how you're going to feel about yourself.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that, like now that we're grown men, I want to talk about like, where did that shift go from like, hey man, I had self-doubt, that now I'm being validated by other people. I'm getting confidence. And now like, hey, I can validate myself. I don't need anybody else to validate me, because like you said, like that could rely on others, and that can cause unhealthy behaviors as well. So like where did that just true confidence, don't care what anybody says, like not saying like you don't hear or maybe even feel it, but like it doesn't affect you as much because you only deal with, hey man, what's the truth in what somebody's saying about me?
Yeah, man. I thought about that a little one after we wrapped the first time, and just, where you really take that piece. I think it was two things for me. It was very, we used to go probably prior to the kids. So me and my wife are from the same hometown.
Yep.
So we used to go home, very frequently. And it's one of the things that I guess as you get older, but it's just funny how like a lot of the people that you probably were looking for that validation, or you thought were cool, or you thought was popular, like you go back home and you like, dang, like not in a way of putting them down, but it's just like, man, they're not really doing anything with their lives, man. And so I think that was a piece for me. It was like, man, all the people that, made me say some of these things, or, gave me a hard time, or, I felt like I was kind of filling my cup up with that validation. They really weren't about anything.
Yeah. And so it's funny that you say talk about like going back home. Same thing. Yeah. Like it's like the potential trajectory that they had back then, they didn't live up to. It's like they peaked at that time, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And so like I tell my son, my 13-year-old a lot, like, hey man, it's okay to be weird in a good way. Like it's okay if somebody's making fun of you for spending extra time studying, or hey man, I'm gonna go hit extra. I'm gonna go run extra laps. Like I'm gonna go do extra of the positive thing versus just trying to be cool and try to fit in. Because I said, some people that you think are cool now, 10, 15, 20 years from now, they're not going to be, because they somehow became stagnant in their life and didn't keep progressing. And it's some other, because one of my favorite quotes that I like to say is, what you are to be, you're now becoming. And so some of those habits that you're creating when you're 12, 13, 14, is going to follow you when you're 24, 34. Not saying you can't create new habits, because like I said, I'm a big component of rewiring, but it takes a little extra work if you don't create a solid foundation. And so, and so with that, like you said, like you kind of saw people not really progress like you thought they would. But like, so how does that affect you, one, like as a husband from a, cause I want to break down this mental aspect and from husband, like talking about like being a black husband, being a black father, and being a black male in corporate. So I want to talk about all three of those. And let's talk about being a husband. And I know you said your dad's your hero and stuff like that. So like, what example did he set for you as a husband growing up? And like, what are some things you took away? Like, I want to be like that, like my dad as a husband. And some things kind of like, I want to do it a little different. Yeah, so let's talk about, let's start there.
Man,
being a black
taking
husband,
a peek under the tent, man, for sure, man. Hey, mom and dad, I love y'all. No matter what's said, I still love y'all.
Yeah.
I think in terms of a husband, I think his biggest thing was really about like always giving your best. Always understanding that sometimes your best may not be accepted or appreciated by everybody, but only you know if you're doing everything that you're doing. So only you can kind of look in the mirror and self-assess, like, man, like, I'm having these issues with my wife, or I'm having these conversations, and she's saying that, hey, she's not happy, or I'm not doing this. Only I can look at the mirror and say, like, man, I'm listening, I'm communicating, I feel like I'm doing these things. And sometimes because you're two different people, as much as they say the two become one, I think that's a lifelong process.
For sure.
I don't think it's instantly. I think you're constantly, maybe fight's not the right word, but you're constantly trying to harmonize,
as you grow and develop.
As you grow and develop, hey, things that you saw as a kid and things that your friends are saying then about relationships, and to that oneness. I think you're always kind of striving to that. So I think, that was really the piece in terms of, hey, always give your best. Only you know that. And really try to do, I don't think I've ever heard him say it verbally, but I really think he was the epitome of happy wife, happy life. In terms of, there were a lot of things that I felt like he sacrificed of himself, and his happiness, or things that maybe he wanted that you just never, at least as a child, who knows between my mom and dad, what was talked about between them two, but it just always felt like that's just how he is. Like, hey, if it's choosing between me having something or somebody else, I'm going to give to them, give the shirt off my back type of thing. I think where that was a double-edged sword for me is I probably fell too much into that realm. In terms of happy wife, happy life. It was a conversation me and my wife were having. I don't remember when it was. I think my oldest had asked me something about me and his mom. And I said, man, when I was younger, like, I was crazy about your mom. Like, I was just like, you can tell me nothing bad about her. Like, I would go to the end of the earth. And not to try to make it seem bad. And she had made a comment of basically saying, like, yeah, you were. And, like, there's have been times where she was like, I missed that. And so I kind of, we were listening to music. That's what it was. And I was basically saying, like, for me, I'm a big music person. And I could always kind of go right back to that point in time when what that song, meant to me. And so it was I don't know, it was some kind of emotional, sappy kind of love song. I said, man, I don't think you understand how many times, like, I used to play this song thinking about your mom. And so for me, I think where it shifted and maybe changed from that is I saw that I wasn't taking care of myself. I was pouring out of an empty cup. And so there's something that I like now. If I were to, talk to people or someone asked me, I'm more of a happy spouse, happy house type of thing. Meaning there's no gender roles. It's saying both of us are spouses. Both spouses need to be happy for us to be happy as a collective.
Happy house.
I'm here to drop a few gems on y'all, man. Just one today, and then I'm done for the day. So that's something for me that I really feel like that's where I had to get, and it took me a lot of time because I was just that generation. I felt like you always heard the opposite. Like it's just about the wife. If you make sure she good, you make sure she got money, and you make sure she can go shopping and she can do all these things, and you'll be good. And it just like
it's not true.
Yeah, to me, I felt like it wasn't true, and there were times where I kind of watched my parents from a distance, and I was like, I don't know. So I think from a husband perspective, that's how I have kind of viewed it. And I think when I look at it from a mental health perspective, that really helped me, understand that you can still be strong without, having to be underneath each other all the time, without, having to be, 100% about her and getting your happiness from how she's feeling. Because there's even a thing that I believe in. It's not to say that in a married couple you're not responsible for trying to get to that space, but I feel like at the end of the day we're all responsible for our own happiness. Is what I believe. Maybe some people may not, but that's not to say that I can neglect what I have to do for my wife. But I do feel like, hey, if she's just really down on me and I know I'm doing my best, then I can still be happy knowing that, hey, I'm giving everything. It may not have anything to do with me. It may have some of the stuff that she has going on that she can't fully receive my best. So that's the way I think about it. What's kind of your view?
Man. So growing up, man, and still to this day, man, my dad is an excellent provider and protector. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, look, Big Tim can come out in an aggressive way, man, but it comes from a good place, man. And so he's always, man, went to work, man. He'll work, work 2-3 jobs if he have to make sure, man, not only do we have everything we need, but also to pretty much everything we want. From a standpoint, from a husband, that big emotional piece wasn't there. But like we talk about, that generation just doesn't talk. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you only can do what you know. So if I only seen my father, man, go to work, come home, hey, get the big piece of chicken, man, and let him watch his TV in peace. That's the type of father or husband that I'm going to be as well. I think what's helped us is, we talk about there's negative things out there on social media and stuff like that, but there's also a lot of positive. So one, not only me and you having this conversation about when we talked about the last episode, talking to our sons and giving them that space to say, how do you feel? It's okay for me to cry. Learning that these things are okay as a male and as a black male in particular is something that I try to model. So I definitely take that provider role very serious. Like my dad did, man. I want to make sure that I can provide my family with everything they need and want, even if it means I have to do a little extra work. I'm okay with that because I feel like as a male, as a husband, that's my responsibility. Also too, man, I need to, like you said, and I tell my kids that I coach, man, hey, you're always going to have a coach in life. I said, especially if you get married, you got to figure out, because when I'm telling you, hey man, you can run faster than that. You telling me you can't. as a coach, as a player, and as my player, you need to figure out, man, how can I give Coach Doe, where there's just another split of a second faster on the drill, give him more. I said, because your wife is sometimes you're gonna feel like I feel like I'm giving everything I got, and she's gonna be like, hey, babe, I need more. You know what I'm saying? And you're gonna have to figure out how to give more. When you can have that conversation, and something I wasn't really good at early on. Me and my wife been married 10 years, man. Early on is talking about how I feel, without it coming out, as my wife like to say, like emotional vomit. Like I just kind of spew my feelings on her. Versus, hey, when something comes up, don't just eat it like, oh man, this is just life. And happy, like you said, happy wife, happy life. I like that. Happy spouse, happy house. So when things do happen and I kind of feel a certain way about it, how can I bring that up to her and say, hey, babe, like, I get you saying this, and I want to validate that, like, your feelings are real, but hey, can I tell you how I feel about what you said?
So, boy, hey, I think that's a big. Do you think that it's and we've talked a little bit about people from the past, our fathers, kind of how that generation was different. I like to think that, man, better communication could solve a lot of problems. Not just relationship problems, but just with anything. Where do you feel like that the struggle for husbands, maybe black husbands, to communicate within their relationships, where do you feel like that comes from? Do you think it's a cultural thing? Do you think it's a man thing? Like where?
I think it's a combination of both. Like you talk, like we talked about in the last episode, you talked about like men don't cry.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Suck it up. Like you talked about your dad was told like be like a frog, let it just roll off your back. Everything doesn't roll off your back, man. Like some stuff you feel. You know what I mean? And so I think it's part cultural, part just being a man, but also too, like I said, like we have to understand, like you can have feelings. Like just because I have feelings doesn't make me any less of a man. I'm a human being. So being able to, I guess, express those feelings. And like you talk about communication, we wasn't taught, and something that came out of like just my personal therapy and even couples therapy, man. Like I told you, I'm a big component about therapy. I think like is that communication piece, man, and what sometimes we lack. We all, most of the time, you want to be heard. Like, hey, man, I'm gonna get my point across. But like in your thought of like getting my point across, I forget to listen. And in order to be an effective communicator, I have to have the ability to listen to what somebody else is saying versus trying to be heard. Because if they're not feeling like they're being heard, they not about to listen to you either.
I think when people hear the word communicate, they instantly think of talking.
Yes.
And they leave out that listening piece of it. And I like to, it's one thing I tell my kids when I'm coaching, I tell them 2 ears, 1 mouth. Basically meaning like, hey, you should be listening twice the amount of time that you talking, because you got 2 ears and you got 1 mouth. But I think it's also, I like to dial down from a relationship perspective and saying listening to comprehend and not to respond. That's something that I got from one of our therapies in terms of couple, is like, if I say something to you and I share my feelings with you, and then you immediately like, and, oh no, what about this then? You didn't even listen. You were just basically like, okay, yep, I'm going to counter to that, and I'm going to say something back to this, I'm going to make sure that I let him know how I felt about that, and it's like, you didn't even make me feel heard in that exchange.
Did you feel like early on versus now, how did you feel like your communication style of like making sure you hear your wife too? And then also too, expressing like, hey babe, I don't feel heard. Like how have you gotten better? Like what are some things?
It's still a journey, but at the beginning I was very much just like pin it all up until exploding type of thing. Not in terms of like abuse or anything.
No, like not like cursing out or stuff like that, but
just like you said, the emotional vomit or maybe it will be decisions I will make that was just like, okay, well, you ain't hearing me, then this is how this is gonna go down. I think the way that I've progressed, I think coming out of that and doing some therapy, I'm very much of a matter of fact person. Okay. When I say things like I don't curse, and I'm not one to like name call, but I'm very like blunt and straight to the point.
Okay.
And sometimes, I mean, some people can handle that, some can't. I mean, apparently my wife can't. Because I remember there was one therapy session we were in, and I was just basically like, hey, I feel like me communicating anything is better than not saying anything at all and then behaving inappropriately, right? Yeah. I feel like that's progression, right? Yeah.
By the way, when we say inappropriate, we don't mean like cheating. It's like, for me, like, it's kind of like, hey, man, she tripping. I'm finna go do what I want to do. I ain't even about the ass. I ain't even worried about it. Like, I'm a man. She ain't gonna tell me.
Yes. Thank you. Dapper Dom. Hey, I appreciate my boy Dapper Dom putting that disclaimer there out for us, man. Because some of y'all ruthless out there on the internet, man. So I know y'all imaginations as well. But I think for me, it really transitioned to just kind of a back and forth thing of like, and if I don't feel heard, then just shutting down. That's a big, because I feel like I don't like to repeat myself.
I used to put up a wall.
So if I gotta repeat myself and then you still not showing me that you're going to act differently based off of what I've shared with you, then that's a problem. I think now I've been more cognizant in terms of when to have these conversations. So the other piece about me is I like to joke a lot. I love joking. And a lot of times my wife is like, man, you're not being serious enough. And it's like, life is so serious. Like, that's my way of somewhat coping through life, is like not taking everything so seriously between work and bills and just being a black man in America and the things that come with that. Like, I love to just have a good time. And so I think sometimes that's a disconnect. I know how to be serious, but I don't feel like a conversation, like people say, like, why are we, like, I don't want to argue. It's like, we're not arguing, we're just having a conversation, and you might be on one side of the fence and I might be on the other, but why do we have to use that term argument when there's a conversation where two people don't agree? I don't see it that way. Now, if it's yelling and throwing stuff and it's getting violent, that's an argument, right? And our people are cutting each other off. That's an intense argument. But I think for me now, I've been better at recognizing my temperament, her temperament, and understanding if we're both hot and overheated, it's not time to try. I mean,
so with that point, do you and your wife have an agreement of saying, hey, well, it might not be both of y'all. You might be hot. Hey, babe, I'm hot right now. I already know that, like, whatever I say is not going to come out the way I wanted to. Give me an hour, give me 2 hours. Let's revisit the conversation. Or if both of y'all hot, put a time on, hey, let's revisit this conversation in the day. Like, I don't want to tomorrow come and then we just kind of sweep it under the rug. Let's have the conversation. We both can express our feelings in a healthy way without yelling at each other. Like, do y'all have any of those guidelines?
We haven't put that in place. I think for me, I've made a mental note of it, of just, I think there's one thing. I was watching an interview of someone who had been married for a long time, and he was just basically talking about when he was younger, all the things that he liked, and his wife wasn't doing it for him, and he was just like so down the dumps about it. He was like, at some point you gotta, hey, pull a note from Mary J. Blige, take me as I am. Some point, you gotta take your spouse for who they are and stop trying to turn them into the image of what you feel like they should be.
Okay.
Because then I feel like, if you're trying to morph them into some, predetermined image of like, hey, we should be intimate this many times and you should be cooking, and you're like, where did that come from? What I'm saying?
So backtracking a little bit, how we started this conversation, you said the two should become one.
Yeah.
Your wife grew up in a different household than you. You grew up in a different household than your wife.
Yes,
I grew up in a different household as my wife. She grew up in a different household. And so what you saw, right, wrong, and indifferent, was your view of what marriage should be. So in for instance, so let's just say like in my wife, like single mom, you know what I'm saying? So like she saw her mom do a lot of things, you know what I'm saying? And also too, like, because she had to, because she didn't have a man there. So like when we first got married, it was like she wanted to, almost felt like she wanted to be in charge of everything, you know what I'm saying, versus me. I grew up, both of my parents, and like there's certain things that my mom and my dad handle, and then my dad let my mom handle. And so like that was my view, right, wrong, and indifferent of what a marriage should be, you know what I'm saying? And but like you said, you have to understand like who your spouse is.
Yes.
And okay, this might have been our view growing up of like what marriage should look like.
Absolutely.
But like how do we take those healthy parts of each one of our upbringings and create a unified, healthy home where we're married and we're a couple and we're parenting the same, you know what I mean? Like, so like, how did you and your wife, and I can talk about it first. And like I said, like I've always, man, just coming out of just understanding how I grew up and like things that I kind of sheltered, always view, like you said, like conflict as brokenness. And so sometimes like I wouldn't say how I felt if I felt like it was going to lead to a disagreement, because I always felt like disagreement meant brokenness. But whether I say something or not, that brokenness or unspoken, those unspoken feelings are still there. You know what I'm saying? So I still feel that. And I think a lot of times men sit with feelings and just kind of sweep it under the rug. Think they're sweeping it under the rug, but it's still there.
It could be coming, to your point, it could be coming across in different ways, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's, you know, different ways. One of my therapists talked about you're using things to escape from your reality, whether it's working long hours, substance abuse. In some cases, it could be infidelity. In other cases, there's a lot of different things to say, like, hey, this is so heavy, and in order to deal with it and not address it, I do things on the outside to kind of almost medicate myself.
So that's another thing too that I had to learn. Like, man, it's hard is okay. You know what I'm saying? And I get, man, that like life is hard and like you want it sometimes they're easier. Because like that's another thing that came up as me and my wife just grew closer together. Like our communication styles. I grew up watching Family Matters, Fresh Prince.
That's the joint right there.
You know what I mean? And the Cosby Show. And so like, although they handle real life situations, it was almost like in a light-hearted way.
Yes, they always found a way to make it feel like.
And so, and I do the same thing. And so my wife would say the same thing, like, you're not taking this serious.
Yeah.
And it's like, I am, but like, I'm trying to, break the ice a little bit to where we can both just kind of like, okay, take a deep breath. Let's talk about it. So that's something that we had to work through as a couple too. Of me just kind of trying to be light-hearted in the moment, and she like,
no, it's not the time.
Yeah, this ain't
this ain't the time for that, man. You need to sit up.
And
straight.
I understand what she's saying, you know what I mean? But like, so I can also too, like, hey, I know I just maybe said something a little lighthearted, but I am taking what we're saying serious.
It reminds me of something my dad used to tell me. He would tell me, perception is reality. So like something like, you may know that, hey, I'm receiving this. I care about her feelings, but she's perceiving it as, no, he joking around, and whether it's right or wrong, that's her reality in terms of how you're making her feel, man. So I think that is definitely big. One of the things as maybe we talk a little bit about being black fathers, one of the things I think transitioning from maybe the husband piece is because I didn't see my parents arguing, it's the same. I didn't know how to deal with it. And I made a conscious choice to have a conversation with my wife and say, as long I want us to argue in front of our kids. They need to see the good and the bad of marriage.
Yeah.
Because now we're gonna be respectful.
Yeah, for sure.
We're not gonna call names. We're not gonna curse and do any of that. But they need to see conflict resolution.
Yes.
That's because they need to understand in a relationship how you set your boundaries, how you get to the end of it and say, hey, maybe I felt this way. Maybe after sharing feelings and all these different things, we get to a place where it's like, hey, I feel this. I understand what you said. We're good to go now. Because I definitely know that looking back, that hampered me in relationships. That hampered me even sometimes at work and things where it's like, I don't really want it. Because I know for me, I'm very mild-mannered and mild-tempered. It takes a lot for me to get to a level to where I'm mad.
Yeah.
But once I get there, it's ugly. It's not often.
Yeah.
But it's just, for me, it's just like, I try to always avoid it because it's like, I don't want to get to that space. And it's like, again, it doesn't have to be arguing. It doesn't have to be seen as bad, but there's always times where, man, I don't know how many billion people there are on this planet. Unique perspectives, unique ways, cultures, the way that they came up. Everyone's not going to agree with everybody.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be a knockdown, drag out, cussing, fighting type of thing, with any of these things. It is listen to hear. You don't even, when people say, hey, we can agree to disagree. Yeah. And move on from it.
I'd say, because no one is the same. Not one person, you know, identical twin, everything. You're still not the same individual. Is, hey, I can not agree with you, but as long as I can understand your perspective and how you got there, I'm okay with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, cool, like, I don't agree, but understand how you got there. But before we transition to fatherhood and being black fathers, what are some things that you that we want husbands to take away from what we're saying and segment about communicating with our wives and not just sweeping stuff under the rug?
To me, I think it all comes back to vulnerability, man.
Okay.
Be okay with being vulnerable. Like again, me being a big music guy, man. But back in the days, they used to be in the rain begging. Baby, come home. I'm missing you. Like, now we call that simping.
Man, what Ray J said, he was all the,
hey, if I had one wish, right? Like, hey, come. To me, that's the type of style, that you have to be okay with being in your feelings, right? And with whatever works for you, man. And let them feel that, man. Like, let them feel that appreciation, man. I feel like now it's all about, man, anything you do, oh man, you simping. You like what? Like, hey, if you want to be with a woman, you want to show her she means a world to you. She everything. Like, you show her that by showing your feelings and understanding that sometimes your feelings aren't going to resonate, with your wife or with your significant other, your girlfriend or whoever it is, in this space, but you gotta let it out. Yeah. You gotta let it out, and you have to do it in a manner that's always be respectful about it. Yeah. I would also say, if you're a person that struggles with temper, or maybe when you say things it comes across the wrong way, think before you speak. One thing that really helped me in my relationship was journaling. Write it down first. I found that her responses to me, she would, when I wrote it down and thought through it, she'd be like, oh yeah, I get it, I understand it, how can we address it?
Yeah, because what you're saying is more concise. Because like, if I'm going into that conversation with my emotions, then one, I might not even convey my message in a way. Because I know I've been in arguments and disagreements, and then I come back and maybe like an hour or 2 hours later, my mom's like, man, I wish I would have said that.
Absolutely. You was like, man, I need to unload the clip.
But like, write that down. Like, how can I express this in a way that my wife can receive it easily? So So yeah, like be vulnerable, like write it down.
Yeah.
But also too, I'm gonna say this out. I'll say this, ladies too. If guys are trusting you enough
Come on
to
now.
express
Come on now.
their feelings,
Come on, preach with it.
like just don't step on that. You know what I'm saying? Because it takes a lot for men to say, "Hey, I feel this way about something," and don't just write it off as an excuse or that. Like, listen to him, because if he's saying it, then he trusts you.
Yes.
And like that's a responsibility like that I
Protect
wouldn't
that.
take lightly. Like, cause me and my guys, man, like most women probably think when guys get together, we talk about sports, and women, we talking about
Yes.
being husbands, we talking about being fathers, we talking about work. You ain't, we talk about sports, man, and we joke about other stuff, but like we talk about how can we be better. Do you have, by the way, you have a circle of friends that you trust with vulnerability and saying, "Hey man, I'm struggling with this right here, bro." Like,
I do. I don't even know if I would call it a circle.
okay,
It might be like a extended tag team if you watch wrestling. Like, for me, it's just like I say. I've said a lot on probably every episode, and I even think with the food stuff and health, it's a journey. Like your life is a journey, right?
Sure.
Like and so I think for me is that piece of that's still in the back of my mind. Sometimes hearing like, man, that's soft. Like I still deal with this today.
Yeah.
But I've gotten better. I know I've gotten better. I know there's definitely some confidence that I can go to and say like, man, I'm struggling. Like it's not going the way I would. Like but yeah, I definitely got some people. I think you need that. I think I've found myself being that for people in times, maybe unsolicited, them sharing things, and I'm not an advice type of guy, especially on relationships. Like I didn't fail so many times, so many different ways to where I would never even put myself in a space to say advice. But I do feel honored when people share things with me, and seek, I don't feel comfortable using the word advice, but just seek maybe experience. So for me, it's really like, hey, here's some ways that I've banged my head on the wall, and I don't want you to do it. Yeah. Not, hey, I'm doing it right, and listen, you need to do it like me. This is like, hey, I don't want to see you bang your head through the wall and go through the wall. Like, I done made these mistakes. Like, I don't want you to make the same ones.
Man, I tell people a lot, like, I can give you advice on certain topics except love. So when it comes to love, man, like all bets are off. Because I can sit on the outside and see you go through something like, bro, I would never put up with that. You know what I'm saying? But it's to you love somebody, you know what I'm saying? You're going to be like,
outside in the rain. Love how you twisted there. You be outside in the rain talking about like you pay all your bills.
Yeah, so I wouldn't tell my guys when they do trust me with things, bro, I wouldn't put up with that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? Because love, it's powerful, bro. It's powerful. Now, if you're asking my perspective, sure, I'll give it. But like I said, you're the one who's going to have to deal with the repercussions of if you make a decision based off something I said. You know what I'm saying? Now, you done took your homeboy advice and you done left, and now you at home alone and playing video games, and you hit me up and hey bro, I'm with my family. Like you should have tried to figure out, you know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, but so also too, fellas, man, get you a couple guys that you can feel like you can trust and say, hey man, I'm struggling with this as a husband. Like have you had certain situations? And guys, when we get to talking, it might be different song, but the same dance. You know what I'm saying? We all face similar situations. Might not be exact same, but it's in that realm. So like, don't think you sitting in silo by yourself, because a lot of us suffer so much in silence as well. So yeah, so one, hey, write your things down, man. Write your feelings down so you can express and convey that to your spouse, your wife, girlfriend in a healthy way. Girlfriends, wives, spouses, whatever, partners. Hey, if a male trusts you enough to come bring his feelings with you, don't just step all over him. Get you a circle, like get you one or two guys that you trust is going to give you sound counsel. Not just going to
all capital letters on that sound part.
Sound,
all caps.
Your sound counsel, not just a guy who just gonna go with whatever you're saying, man. Because true friendship, true brotherhood, is holding each other accountable. Like you might come to me and say, "Hey, bro, she tripping about this," and when you tell me the story, I might be like, "Nah, bro, like you had a part to play in this." So yeah, but switching over, man, to fatherhood, like you have two.
Yeah.
I have two currently. 3 is on the way.
Breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news. September 18th is the due date for baby Wilkins, boy number 3, headed into this world, man. I was just having a conversation with my wife, bro. Right before I came in here, and just talking about how parenting is wild, man, and like you have this expectation, and so like I'll talk about like how me and my dad relationship was growing up. I'll let you talk about like how you and your dad relationship was growing up, and then like how that has affected you as a father. And I think we talked about it some on the last podcast as well. I like to say, man, the older I get, man, the smarter my parents get. You know what I'm saying? And that what I mean by that is, as I experience life, now I understand some of the things that my dad was trying to teach me. You know what I'm saying? Growing up, man. And my dad was, he definitely pushed me, man. He definitely pushed me, not just in sports, but in school. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't come home with all A's. You know, because you hear other kids, hey, man, I got $10 for every A I got, or $5. So you come home, hey, Dad, what do I get X amount of dollars for my A's? No, that's what you're supposed to do, son. You know what I'm saying? And like, I understand what he's saying. I'm saying like, you can't do that for your kids, but also too, like, as I look back, he was already giving me stuff that I wanted anyways. You know what I'm saying? So like, I try to teach my son understanding, like, hey man, when you're asking for things, make sure you really want it, because it take away from other things. You know what I'm saying? Like, and just a small example, man, my son plays baseball, and last year the big things was kids were wearing the necklaces with their number, and I'm like, hey man, before I spend my money on that, are you really gonna wear it? Because I already know he's not gonna wear it. And my mom, he's like, Dad, I'm gonna wear it. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna wear it, so I spend my money on it. He might have wore it 1 or 2 games before I seen it shaking just in a bag. So then he asked me for a video game.
Yeah.
And I go, I can't get it for you. I said, because when I asked you about, did you really want this necklace? You said, yeah. I said, now I spent my money on it, wasted, where you really didn't want it. You just saw other people with it. You really want this video game, but I can't get it for you because you wasted money here.
Valuable lesson.
A valuable lesson. And so, like, I think I learned those type of things from my dad, man, because my kids got me a card this year for Father's Day, and it was like one of the things I learned from my dad is like, money don't grow on trees. You know what I mean? And what that means, like, the hard work aspect, what he was trying to teach me, like, man, it just doesn't come freely, bro. Like, I can't just go pick these dollars off a tree. Like, you have to work for it. And I think he was trying to create a mindset of that hard work and just dedication to your craft of whatever you do on the sports or in school. Because what I try to teach the kids, and I try to teach my son, is don't let your what I'm trying to say. Don't let your effort be predicated on the outcome. Don't let me, hey man, I'm finna be in school to get all A's because I know my parents finna give me $10, $15 for all A's. No, like, let my hard work be, I want to be the best student that I can be. And maybe the outcome of that is all A's. Not I want to get all A's based on what I'm going to get. Because sometimes the outcome, you can do everything right and it's still not come out the way you want it to be. So I'm trying to teach my son that as well in different ways of giving effort, man, to your craft. Like you want to, you know what I'm saying? Like you say you want to play baseball, you want to be the best, and I broke it down to him about numbers game. So I talked about, man, like I said, man, let's just take it's 700,000 seventh graders in the world.
Okay.
1% of that get to play at the next level. What number does that go down to? He was like 7,000. I said, okay, out of that 7,000, only 1% of that get to play at the next level, which is professional. So how many is that? He said 70. I said, do you think you're working hard enough to be one of 70 out of 700,000? You know what I mean? And I think you have to break down it into where like they can't understand it. Because sometimes they might just think, are y'all working hard? Are you?
Yeah.
Like, are you working hard, harder than, you know what I'm saying, 700,000 other kids? You know what I'm saying? Like, what does that look like? But then also, too, I think, man, me being a parent also, too, challenges me and making me look at myself. Like, bro, are you really doing what you asked him to do?
Yeah.
And if not,
I with myself a few times.
Yeah, looking at myself like, hey, bro, you asking that of him or of them, or you doing that yourself? You know what I mean? And so, hard work is one of the things, like, I think my dad really instilled in me, man, and just pushing myself to be my best self. And I try to do that, like I said, I try to break it down, have those conversations to make my son understand, versus my dad would just say, man, you can work harder, this and that. Really, my didn't break it down into tangible steps and make me understand. So I try to break it down into tangible steps. Like, all right, you want to have all A's. What does that mean? Like, how do you get there? Because there's some classes you're going to struggle with more than others. So does that mean, hey, man, I know language is really not my thing. So I need to spend at least 10, 15 minutes a day outside the classroom working on that, versus math comes easy. So I know, man, if I pay attention to class, do the homework, study some before the test, I'm going to be straight. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Have those type of conversations. What about you, man, as a father? And I know, like, what are some things you took from your father and try to implement your kids?
I think for me, the sacrifice piece is big. Still trying to balance the piece of doing enough for myself. Me and my dad's relationship growing up was, I was like attached to the hip. I mean, if anybody from Carbondale, like, because my dad was a smaller area, but he was also an educator and a coach.
Yeah.
So everyone in town knew him. So for the longest, I was Mr. McGowan's son because I was always tagging along with him, whether it was basketball practice, basketball games. He would do stuff at school. He would, he took up a bunch of jobs. So any job he was at, I was always with him. And so it's interesting because my two boys have the same relationship with me.
Yeah.
And to the point where it's just like, man, I'll go somewhere and they'll be like, where you going? Why you gotta go? Why, and so, but for me, I think the biggest thing is just understanding that, those moments and those memories, and like they say, like, that time goes by quickly where you can be remembering being in the delivery room with them, and then it's like, man, we talking about graduations and colleges and what you want to do with your life. Like, you snap your finger and you see those things come very quickly. So I think for me, it's really about pouring into them. Mm-hmm. I always say my stance on, raising boys or raising kids in general is it's less about the time that you're with me, but it's preparing you for the time that you're going to be away.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have to be in these shoes, and it's not up to me how you make that decision anymore. It's solely yours. So that's why I said the whole, having conflicts or arguments in front of them is important so they can see right or wrong, like, man, this is how they did it. I don't want to do it this way. Or, okay, yep, I see how he did this. I like all of those different things. So really just trying to, be the example for them.
Yeah, real quick. Do you, say you and your wife had a the conversation that didn't go well in front of the boys, do you circle back with them alone and say, hey, man, I know me and your mom was discussing this. Hey, your dad didn't do this in the right way?
We have more conversations than my parents had with me, which I think growing up I could understand. I think it was like, hey, we're mom and dad. You guys are the kids. Like, don't worry about what it is that we have going on. But again, my whole thing is, I guess coincidentally, being the son of a teacher is teaching them. Yeah. These are all, like they like to say, teachable moments.
Yeah.
So these are things, never let them go unwasted, whether they are good or bad. Mm-hmm. Right? And so being able to talk to them about, what you're talking about, accountability. Hey, if you do something wrong, admit to it, be sincere with it, and then move on from it. And so I think that's the way I really try to look at it with them, is teaching them along the way, whether things are good or bad. I think for me, because I'm shy and a little more reserved, and have kind of kept my feelings inside for quite a period of time. That's why I talk to them so much.
Okay.
I try to talk to them about different things. Hey, how are you feeling about this? Or how did you feel about, certain things? I think there's enough of a balance to where, hey, they know how to sit up straight when some, didn't go the way that it was supposed to. And it's really, we're talking about discipline versus like, hey, let's just really have a conversation about it and understand a little bit behind the whys of where some of these things are going. But I think the biggest thing for me in all of that is just being present, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally to them as well.
And I don't think we're gonna get a chance to dive it, because this might be
a three-part.
I feel like this might be a three-part.
Throw y'all a little bonus.
Yeah, a little bonus. And maybe we can start there in the next podcast, like you said, like being present, not just physically but mentally. Because I've started to check myself, man, like in the last couple of years or something like that, because these phones are right here. So we might be hanging out, man, with our sons, and saying, Mav might be saying, man, Dad, can you build some magnetize with me? And I'm in there and I'm laying on the floor, but also I'm scrolling.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Versus, hey, man, my phone's in the other room. Me and him creating.
Call me out too.
With it?
Man, hey, they when it comes, they like, hey, so I I'm a video game person. When they were younger and they couldn't do all that, then I was away from it. I get it here and there between everything else I had going on. But now that since they're old enough, that is our thing, is playing together. So hey, you want to play 2K, you want to play wrestling, whatever it is, game that we're playing. And sometimes it'll be like, Dad, like you ain't really paying attention. Like I'd be like, oh my bad, like let me in. But it's because I'm doing something else and multitasking. So that's the one thing. I used to feel guilty when they would be like, hey Dad, like why you gotta go here? But I'm like, I'm with you guys all the time. And now, especially as they're getting more into friends, I've gotten to, it's less about how much time I'm spending with them. It's more about the quality of the time that we have together, making sure I'm present in all of those spaces, so that I can remember it. Hey, you remember that time we were playing and you hit a buzzer beater, or, when you, like, it's about creating those memories. And if you're on your phone and you're not, they could tell you something, it's like, I don't remember that. Yeah. Because you weren't present all the way.
And I think, man, something that, like, I was just kind of taking into account too, and definitely for sure, man, I think I do it with Mav. I think I do a better job with it with Mav than I do with Dalen, but also too, there's some Dalen doesn't live in the household too, so like there's a little bit of nuance to that, but like that I'm gonna take with Baby Wilkins. I'm not gonna say the name that no wife going back and forth about the name. Yeah,
they in the boardroom right now figuring it out.
Baby Wilkins is, like you just touched on, they do eventually grow up and, hey, Dad not cool, and he cool, but he not cool. I'm gonna go hang with my friends. Yeah. So like also too, man, taking that time when they do ask you, and you don't have to go to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, let me spend this time, because in certain point of life, they not gonna want to hang with you. You know what I mean? Like last weekend, like my son really likes to play the game with as friends. Me, well, last weekend, he was like, Dad, do you want to get on the show with me? So I told my wife, I'm finna go get on the game. Like, he don't ask me
too many times. I gotta take it on.
So let me take this opportunity to go play with him, man. And I think like as fathers, and we'll probably continue this conversation, man, make sure that you're present not only physically but mentally. Also, too, as you try to teach your kids things that you were taught, make sure you can speak a language of a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 13-year-old, not from a 38-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, hey, let me break it down to you from your level so you can understand it. But also, too, and we touched on the last episode, asking them their perspective. That way, the whole understanding is, all right, son, like, I don't think you should have did that, but I understand how you got there, but then, like, how do we correct that in the future? Is what I think we should take away, too, today. Circling back as far as being husbands and spouses, be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? Be vulnerable. Hey, have a circle, like I said, of sound counsel, not guys who not gonna hold you accountable when it's your fault. Look in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? How can I be better? I heard a guy talk about, because you can, little petty stuff, you can get upset about it. He was talking about that his wife always left the cap off the toothpaste, and like he used to be like, "Fat, why you can't put the cap back on the toothpaste?" And then he was talking to somebody one day, and they just said, that doesn't bother Fat. That bothers you. So that's a you problem. And I'd like to say everything in life is a you problem too. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what could I have done different? Whether that's from an emotional standpoint or a physical standpoint, there's something that I can control in that situation. So, like, if it's really something that bothers you, you need to do something about it because it doesn't bother your spouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's fair.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. And like I said, too, hey, if a man opens up to you, trust him in that space. Like, don't take advantage of his vulnerability by, girl, let me tell you this. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or throwing it back in his face.
Weaponizing. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Don't do that. That could end up, let's really, I just feel like because of what we've talked about and the stereotypes, like you said, to get to that point, it takes a lot. So it's like if you weaponize, and to me, again, I don't think social media is real life in a way, but I think it is a microcosm of a lot of ways that people think. People open their mouth and go on those comment sections and say a lot of those things, and you're like, man, people really think this way. So I do feel like it's a lot of, like, I see things where a man is being emotional or, saying how he's feeling. People are like, man, he's sassy, he's zesty. He like we need to be at a better place as a community, because when you start looking at these types of things, when people feel like there's no one for them to turn to, especially the people that they feel like should be closer to them, they make some decisions that sometimes can't be reversible. And so to your point, if someone trusts you that enough to be vulnerable, a man, like, you have to guard that. Like, you have to guard that with the lock and key, man, because not doing that, man, and making him feeling like he's less than or less of a man for doing that, it could just have some just ugly consequences.
Yeah, because I mean, anybody like who's had a bad relationship, they take that into like, well, I opened up to such and such, and then he did this to my feelings, or she did that to my feelings. So you bringing that, and that, you know what I'm saying? And so like that, you create that sense of like, man, I'm not gonna share, because last time I shared, and now that's affecting a relationship that really could blossom, because you're taking past trauma and hurt
that relationship
into this. So it's
that relationship trauma, man. It is. And because we know that a lot of people aren't going to therapy in the first place, then we know there's probably more people that are going into relationships not healed, not prepared, and like you said, when that tension and conflicts arise, it's really not because of the other person. It's the you problem that you're talking about. It's because you have things that you haven't ironed out or seeked answers on or gotten better about. That's caused those things to kind of go the way that they are. So I'm big on that piece that you talked about in terms of, hey, if man gives you that, hey, trust that, respect it, guard it, being vulnerable. I think that's a big thing, man. For sure.
And relationship isn't a 50-50. It's
what?
First of all,
so it ain't gonna be bad now.
First of all, I think it's 100. I want you to bring your whole self. I'm gonna bring my whole self.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
We multiplying.
Yeah, we want now at certain stages of relationships. You know what I'm saying? Like whether work's gotten in the way, whether maybe man you just been taking care of the kids or something that maybe I'm only operating at 90%. Yes, now I feel like your spouse, your significant other, should pick up that slack for you. You know what I'm saying? So maybe I need to be 110 and you just 90 today. Or maybe I'm 80, I need you to be 120. Now, of course, you can't sustain that because that's when I feel like strain and stress comes on relationships. But we both do need to be whole. And that's why I think we're both big components about therapy because like we all have different trauma that we don't even realize we have, you know what I'm saying? And we're bringing it into relationships as husbands and as fathers because we're not completely healed. So in order for us, the relationship to be whole, we have to be two whole individuals. I feel like this conversation was a little heavy. You know what I mean? Like, comment, hey, let us know what you think about stuff that we're talking about, stuff that we're sharing. Like you said, we're trying to engage with you as well. Of course, man, look, always like, share, subscribe, do all those things. Grow with us, help us grow. Things you want us to talk about, put it in the comments. You know what I mean? Like we want to be relatable to you. Anything, man, TheeAlexMAc you got before we get out of here, man?
I couldn't have said it even better than that, man. We gonna step out of Cookout for now, man.
Yeah.
We out.
See ya.